Welcome back to the big final, part 5. And today it's not only about how to sustainably build a business in the speaking world, how to sustainably position yourself on the market. Today we have part 5 with Chris Davidson talking about client alignment. Hello and welcome back, Chris Davidson.
Thank you very much, Niels.
So first, of course, thank you very much for taking all the time for part 1, opacity, part 2, system engagement, part 3, community engagement, part 4, market alignment. So if we have people now who just jumped into part 5, you should listen first to the other 4 parts which we had before, because today we have the big final, client alignment. Well, it's all about the client, isn't it? So Chris, what does that mean now with client alignment?
What it means, Niels, is having permission to rewrite the rule book, permission to move the goalposts.
Well, that sounds very nice for me as a service provider, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So let's roll back briefly to stage 1. Start at and just go at a quick galloping pace through the whole lot, and then that'll kind of make sense. So we started in opacity, where really we didn't have any traffic to our website. Nobody knew who we were, and we weren't making any money. Mm-hmm. We started building some credibility. We started building reputation and relevance by building content and authority, and we bolted some systems into the website that allowed us to connect with people, system engagement. We found out who those people were. We understood their community more. We served the community more, community engagement.
Yes.
And then we said, actually, as I get to know these people more, do you know what? I really do understand them. And actually, I understand them better than they think I understand them. In fact, you know what? I understand them better than they know themselves. So if I'm able to prove that to them, then I can align myself with that market, hence market alignment. Okay, now it's that stage from community engagement to market alignment is the big bit where people go, oh, this person's a serious player.
Yeah.
So what is client alignment then? So client alignment, and we're now getting into the really subtle points of marketing here, but client alignment is permission to rewrite the rule book. Now that comes from, as I said earlier, for market alignment, demonstrating that you know the client better than they know themselves. And then the only other question they're going to ask is, do you have the proof? And that's if you can answer that question, then job done. Those are the two questions.
How do I answer this question properly then?
Yeah. So let me give you an example. I'm going to go to an example from my father's life. As you know, he was a surgeon. Yes. And in 1955, so that's going back something, isn't it? But in 1955, he was approached by some facial reconstruction surgeons, and they had a patient who they basically were unable to help. They had run out of their ability. They'd done everything they possibly could, and they were now stuck. And they came to a point of saying, well, look, the only other people who operate in this area of the body are the eye people, and it's not really that close. And then the only other people are the ear, nose, and throat surgeons. Well, let's go and speak to Davidson. He's an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. So they came along to Dad, and they asked him, is there anything you can do to help us here? Now, Dad thought there was. He wasn't completely convinced. He went to see the patient, understood the difficulty, wasn't completely convinced that he could do anything, but he understood what, and he gave it a thought, and he said, and then he spoke to his medical colleagues, the ones that came to ask him for help after having done some thought, and he said, I think there is something I can do. And he rang up his friend in pathology, because in these days, we're back in 1955 now, so we have to remember the context. In these days, you didn't have to worry about asking families permission to do this, that, and the other. So he rang up his friend in pathology and said, look, John, next time you get a couple of cadavers in good condition, give me a ring.
Okay.
So this happened in due course, and Dad went down to the pathology lab, got his scalpels out, and did a bit of an exercise. and convinced himself that actually he did know what was going on. But in that process that he was down in the pathology lab doing that work, he came away from that with the following information. Number one, he could help. He had tested his thesis and found that it was correct. Number two, he could now go back to the patient, look the patient in the eyes, and say, hand on heart, I know you better than you know yourself, and I have the proof. And so he was able to offer her an operation. Of course, he wasn't entirely sure what he would find when he got in there, but he was 95% sure, and all turned out well. So the point here is inclined alignment. Dad invented doing that process. Dad invented a new procedure. It was all photographed. He wrote it all up. It was published in all the journals. And I looked. I think I looked last year. And this was in 1955, and it was photography in the operating room in 1955. Amazing. And even last year, I think that paper was still cited about 10 times. So what am I saying here? What I'm saying is that Dad he rewrote the rule book for that part of surgery. So do you know enough? Have you done enough research that allows you to rewrite the rule book for a part of the market that you serve, so that for a small number of clients, you really can say, I really do know you better than you know yourself. I really do have the proof. That's really what it comes down to.
So when we try to transfer that in our business world to the CATS community, so consultants, authors, trainers, speakers, especially for speakers, that could be quite challenging. Or do you have an example where you would say that someone was able to do that?
Well, let's go back to, I think in the very first episode, I mentioned the 3 currencies that are important to speakers: reputation, relevance, and revenue. So reputation and relevance, put revenue to one side. Reputation and relevance are really, really important to us as speakers. And in terms of creating that level of insight in the marketplace, I really think it is, in my view anyway, and I think this is important for speakers, and I think this is going to become more important as the 21st century moves on. It is going to be more important to us that we do actually deliver something and don't just talk about it. I think this is really important. And I think it's important because the world is moving. I think as I talked earlier, the world is moving in an earlier episode. The world is moving from a linear world to a complex world. And in a complex world where the problems are complex, you get a better answer by having a diverse team. That's proven. So, there's no point in even discussing that anymore. That's well proven. You can you go and read as many of the psychology books as you want to read about that. There have been so many tests about it. It's beyond true. We don't need to discuss that anymore. If the world were a simple linear world where, we were running for example, a 400-meter sprint, then you are right to say, well, we just need the 4 fastest sprinters. That's all we need, and we've won the race. We don't need anything else, right? We just need the 4 fastest sprinters. Job done. But the world isn't like that anymore. It was like that not long ago. And that's the point. People think, well, hang on a minute, 1990 wasn't that long ago. And it wasn't that long ago, 1990. But actually, we are now knocking on the front door of the 3rd decade of the 21st century. Life has changed. And it is a lot more complex than it used to be. And if we're looking at complexity, then you're only going to get around complexity with a diverse approach. And so speakers that can demonstrate a diverse approach to solving a problem and actually deliver a solution as opposed to just talking about it, deliver a solution. I really think that's where it's at.
Excellent. So now some people will have listened to all these episodes where they had opacity, system engagement, community engagement, market alignment, and client alignment was excellent today. Now they sit there and think, okay, where shall I start? Because of course now people see this is quite a lot of work to do, and I highly recommend your work, Chris, as you know, because there are lots of people out there who tell people in 90 days you are a world famous speaker, 14 days to a written book, and all this nonsense which doesn't bring you anywhere. But when people now wonder, where shall I start? Like the top 3 tips from Chris Davidson, what are the top 3 steps I have to take right now to be ready for what's coming up?
Number 1, get the Facebook pixel on your website. And I said, why is that number 1, Chris? It's number 1 because 89% of speakers don't have the Facebook pixel on their website.
Okay.
89% do not have it, right?
11% at least have it, which doesn't even mean that 11% use it, they just have it.
Correct. Now, just let me preface that by saying people are saying, well, but I don't do any Facebook marketing. I don't do any Facebook advertising, Chris. I understand that. Doesn't matter. Yeah. That's not the point. Even if you're not doing any Facebook advertising now, you might be in the future. And the Pixel holds 90 days worth of data before it overwrites. So you've got 3 months worth of data there. So there's no point in starting from a blank sheet of canvas when you don't need to. We know that market alignment, client alignment, and community engagement are important. People are on Facebook. And when I say the Facebook pixel, throw in the Twitter pixel if you're big on Twitter. Some people are, some people aren't. But do also put in the LinkedIn Insights tag. So every speaker should have the LinkedIn Insights tag, which is just another pixel, and the Facebook pixel on their website, right? Just get them loaded right now, so at least you're collecting information about the connectivity, as it were, in terms of relationships of traffic between those sites and your website. First point. Second point. Right back at the beginning, we mentioned that broadly speaking, half the websites out there, half the speaker websites out there at least, don't have HTTPS installed. Just check that. Make sure that you do have that. If you don't have that, then you need a migration plan in place. And that really is important. That's really important because you're just not going to get anywhere without it. So don't listen to the brigade that say, oh, you only need HTTP if you're doing e-commerce and things. That is so old-fashioned. That's just nonsense. So forget that. HTTPS is really important. A mobile responsive website, really important because Google are coming hot and heavy on that this year. The mobile first index is rolling out by September 2020. So those are Facebook Pixel, HTTPS, mobile. Those are really important. Now, Two further things I'm going to kind of close with. Blogs. Please, let's not dismiss blogs. Either a video blog or a written blog, whatever, or podcast as you're doing, Niels. I don't mind really the medium by which it's done, but regular blogging, video, podcasting, however you do it, getting regular information out there is the number one way to build your authority. And if you're a consultant, author, trainer, speaker, you will want to have an authority website. So blogs are really important. And the final thing moving forward is that we are all going to have to recognize that the next thing, well, it's not the next thing, Google are already doing it. But Google have said, and they're already doing it, load speed is a ranking factor. And I can tell you now, because I've tested it, that next year's digital footprint survey, we will be surveying all of the websites for their load speed characteristics. And I can tell you now that most speakers' websites are way too slow.
I fear that this is going to come because many people didn't spend much time on that. So of course now, first, thank you very much for your top 3 tips. And of course, thank you very much as well for taking hours and hours of your time to get these 5 episodes together. So it is more than needed now to ask, how could you help people? Because some people now will think, I could do this by myself in a trial and error system, with or without success. It may or may not work. How can you help people to build their business in that way, which you just...
Well, in January 19, after years of research, and you remember some of it, but after years of research,
yeah.
and spending money on various bits of software, making investments here, investments there, some of which worked out, some of which didn't. You know what life is like. But in January 2019, I launched Speaker Business Builder, and Speaker Business Builder is a content management system for the CATS community, content management system for consultants, authors, trainers, speakers. It allows people to build websites and funnels in a very quick way. But Speaker Business Builder is where it's at for me. But if people would like to get to know me a little bit more and get to understand a bit more about the way I work and who I am and what have you, then I would say go to my YouTube channel and go and find Wicked Web Wednesdays, the weekly video blog that I broadcast. And there's Wicked Web Wednesdays is created simply to help members of the CATS community make better use of the web. So that's your place to start. Go and look at some of the videos on Wicked Web Wednesdays, and from there, if you want to reach me, it's an easy peasy lemon squeezy. Follow your nose from Wicked Web Wednesdays, and you'll find me.
Perfect. So, Chris, thank you very much for all the time you invested with me to put all this together. Of course, I put all your contact data in the show notes as well, and of course, I can highly recommend that you read Chris' reports and also watch his videos, because I did it by myself and his work is highly recommended. So the only thing I can say at the end of all our 5 episodes, Chris, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure, Niels. Thank you.